Hello, everybody, and welcome to another fantastic episode of Truth Wanted. I'm your host, ObjectivelyDan, talking to you from the past. This is a message from the past. We are recording this the day after last week's episode because this is coming out the day after the American Thanksgiving holiday, and we wanted to give our crew a chance to take a bit of a break, and we're going ahead and recording this early. This is Truth Wanted. This is the live call-in show that usually happens Fridays at 7 p.m. Central. Today is going to be a pre-recorded episode. So all of our callers are either with us in the chat or we have some pre-recorded messages that we're going to be talking about. I am Objectively Dan. My host is Puck. What the Puck? AKA he has been on the show before quite recently, so you probably recognize him if you're a watcher of this show, and we hope to continue having him on for special events like this. Puck, what's going on?
Doing well. Yeah, it's good that we're taking care of this recording early because there's a lot of shopping that needs to be done on Friday. So
that's right. And yeah, this is different from what we're usually doing, but we like experimentation on this show. We like doing different things, so I'm looking forward to it. So yeah, we got about 8 callers for you today, and that's another thing too. I know exactly how many callers we want to get to ahead of time, which is not something I wish I knew that sometimes doing this thing. But anyway, do you have any plans for Thanksgiving, Puck? You got anything going on?
Yeah, as usual for holidays, I'm just going to be spending most of it trying to find the most polite way to evade my in-laws. I like to spend my holidays in quiet, private introspection, meaning by myself. But no, I have no concrete plans other than let's see what shopping I can get done.
Yeah, I guess this year with the coronavirus and stuff, like having plans would be like the weird thing, which is like the opposite of what it usually is. At the ACA, like at the actual building, we would typically have a Friendsgiving event every year where we, like everybody comes and brings food. I think that's most people, I think, know what that is now. It's become more popular. Unfortunately, of course, the building has been closed for over half a year now. But I can't wait when we can go back and do something like that again because it's pretty fun.
Yeah, but the silver lining is now you can take in guests from anywhere in the country. I wouldn't be here if you guys only had Austin taping.
That's
so I'm very
true.
happy to be.
This can be our Friendsgiving episode. This is our Friendsgiving together, except instead of food, we're sharing conversations. It's a potluck of conversations and ideas that we're bringing to the table today. I like that angle. That's pretty good. Well, Puck, I mean, people already know who you are. I don't have to introduce you. Are you ready to just go straight to the calls?
Let us dive into the calls.
Let's just dive into the calls. All right. So our first one is in-house. It's one of our moderators of our Discord and also a nonprofits host. This is Malty from Washington. Hello, Malty. What's going on?
Hello, Dan. Hello, Puck. How are you doing?
Hi, doing well.
Doing well, Malty. Good to hear you again. What's going on?
Well, sometimes I get frustrated and give up on conversations. I know it's important to keep lines of communication open between friends and family. How best can we listen to our colleagues, our friends and family, when they have claims that can't be substantiated?
Man, that's the question, right? Like, how do we do this? Like, how do we even begin to have these kinds of conversations? Like, when is it even appropriate? Sometimes I think is a good thing to ask as well, because sometimes people will say something that is just completely unsubstantiated, completely unreasonable, but like it's your boss, or like you're at the table with people and it's like, is this the time or place? I think to answer that question first, and then I'll talk about the patience part, right? First, like I think it matters as to what is close to your integrity. If somebody were to say something that was personally insulting or hurtful to myself or the people around me, then I think that's a time where you can push back, or you can fight back. If somebody is saying, if one of my family members is saying something about the LGBT community or something, that happens sometimes. I will be the first to say, like, hey, I don't appreciate that, and I don't like it when you say that kind of things around me, because like I know people in that community, and it's disrespectful, and that's what harms my sense of integrity. So that's something to ask about. How patient you can really be about certain kinds of topics. Because if somebody's saying something like, again, like Bigfoot's a popular one we always go back to, right? Like whether somebody believes in Bigfoot or not is not really immediately going to affect my life. Whether somebody believes that an LGBT person should have equal rights to me or you, like that does have more of a consequence. So it's something that's going to be a sliding scale for everybody. But, let's talk about the patience thing too. I'll go into that. So like, can you practice patience? Yes, I think you can. I think I've been doing this long enough now to where I've heard so many things, like stuff just kind of slides off my back. But if you don't have that kind of experience, it can be harder to engage in stuff, especially some of the wilder and crazier stuff. Malty, I know you listen to my show, so you hear about all the kinds of stuff that we talk about on here. But again, I guess it goes back to this idea of, all right, is what this person is saying, like, are they violating my sense of integrity? Are they like actually harming me in any way by their speech? And if they really aren't, if they're really not immediately posing a threat, then I can deal with that. I can work with that. And I'd rather be somebody that I can at least, try to have a sense of patience with it. And I'd rather talk to somebody that has a sense of patience with themselves than talk to somebody that's going to be, all up in my grill with whatever point they have made. Not to say that there isn't a time and place for anger, but that you always have to think about what's your audience, what's your situation, what's the best way to effectively communicate. So anyway, that's my long answer to that question. Puck, I want to hear your take.
Before I give you my take, if I know a lot of people who watch this show are only listening on podcast or on YouTube after the fact, but if you do get a chance to watch the show, please do, because you just missed about 2 minutes of Pico going on full on predator mode. It was very entertaining to watch. It's the cutest cat ever. I suppose the most important thing that I had to remember is that you never really owe anybody a conversation about that.
That's true.
If you decide that it's getting too heated and there's nothing productive going on, it's well within your rights to just say, okay, this is not a good time to talk about this or something, and just end the conversation there.
Yeah.
And I get it. This is kind of hard when everybody's gathered around the turkey, and in my cases, it's always some innocuous comment, like someone says, "Oh, thank God that God was looking out for me, because I would have been in a serious accident." And if little things like that, I can usually just let that slide, right? Like the dessert course is not the time to bring up, well, how do you know it was God that was really doing that for you?
Sure.
I'm with Dan, though, that when it starts to become more dangerous speech, like Dan brought up the example of being disparaging toward the LGBT community, that is a good time to speak up. Now, the question is whether to speak up right then and there and to stand up at the table and say, hey, this talk does not happen at my table, or if one should, I don't know, maybe call attention to it later. Instead of calling out, maybe you call them in and say, hey, I wanted to talk to you about something that you said at dinner last night, and here's why I think that it's a harmful thing to say. So I think another part of it is choosing when you have the conversation and in what avenue. I like having messages over or conversation over messages, because you have more of a chance to look back on your statement and make sure you're saying exactly what you want to say, and you don't have to respond immediately. And in a lot of cases, that kind of takes out some of the immediate heated hostility.
Yeah,
I like that calling. I'm sorry, Dan.
Go ahead, Malty. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say I really like that. The idea of calling people in instead of calling them out. That's a good way of framing it. Thank you.
I like that phrase too. And you're right. Like, time is just as important as place as well. Like doing it in front of other people, while it may feel good in that moment to try to call somebody out like that. If your goal is to change somebody's mind, like that is going to put them on the defensive really, really fast. And, you're just not going to do as good as you'd want. So yeah, I like that. I don't know. I don't know if there's any more to explore with this particular.
Well, the only thing that I would add, like if I'm a guest in someone's home and they want to do something like offer a benediction over the dinner, that's the last thing I'm going to do is I'm going to say, well, do you think that actually did any benefit? Like, that's probably what I'm thinking. But while I'm there, I'm going to respect whatever traditions that they have in their house. And if they want to have a moment of silence and prayer, then I will, at the very least, respectfully comply with the silence.
Right. This goes back to my idea of like, respecting your own integrity, right? If just the idea of prayer, if that goes too far for your personal boundary, then that's your personal boundary. For me, I grew up most of my life as a Christian, and if something like that happened, it's like, okay, I can bow my head for 5 seconds. But yeah, like being the rebel atheist at the table that's saying, I'm not going to pray. I'm not going to, I mean, like, I get it. You're right. You shouldn't have to do it, right? Like you're not obligated to, except the cultural, biases and the context of the situation. But we also people, and we also have to navigate our lives, and there's going to be better ways to do that than others if your goal is to really convince somebody of, the truth of your speech. But I don't know. I think there's always going to be an open-ended question, but that's my take. And Puck, I like your take as well. So thanks for the call, Malty. I appreciate it.
Well, thank you for all you do, guys. Have a good one. See ya.
Thank you for all you do, Malty, and we will see you later. Yeah, Malty, cool guy. If you ever get a chance to go on the after show Discord of Truth Wanted, Malty is usually there throwing out questions for us, and he's really also been helping out at the ACA with the ACA for a while. But let's go ahead and go to our next caller, who's another ACA mod. This is Stitics calling in from Colorado. Hey, Stitics, what's going on?
Hey, Dan. Hey, Puck. How's things going?
Going pretty good.
Good.
Enjoying my Saturday morning, which is something I literally never get to say on this show. So,
oh, that's got to be great. So my question is, you guys have been hosting the show for like vastly different lengths of time. We got the OG host, and then the baby host. So preferably starting with Puck, with the differences in how much experience you have hosting the show and the differences you have in personal knowledge and interests, what is the one topic that you either really hope someone will call in about, or that you just like an excuse to wow us with your knowledge of?
I don't have a deep knowledge in a lot of things. I suppose the deepest would be Christian apologetics. So if somebody really, calls and starts talking about, why they can prove the resurrection, or if they bring up the ontological argument, okay, I've been listening to those for a long time. So let's see what I can do about dealing with them live. Anything else, and I think this is actually what makes it interesting. If it's a supernatural claim, I haven't really looked into it. So it's even more interesting having a skeptical eye at a claim that I've never been able to look at before. Let's see what happens when I have to deal with something that's completely new to me. This just happened with, what was it? Falun Gong. We had a caller about Falun Gong. I had never heard of that before. So it was interesting for me to see what my approach is to something that Dan has encyclopedic knowledge about. I think that contrast is a lot of fun, honestly.
Honestly, but I kind of like that element too, Puck, of like finding a brand new belief that I've never even heard of, and I'm just like tackling for the first time. Like that's a kind of a fun challenge in of itself. I do have like a wish list of kind of potential topics. The first one that comes to mind is the Black Hebrew Israelites, and the reason why that one comes first is because literally like 5 minutes from where I live, every Saturday there's a Black Hebrew Israelite group that goes out, and this guy has a bullhorn, and he's talking to, like, yelling at people while they're shopping at the grocery store and stuff. And like I've always thought, like, I mean, I really want to just talk to that guy. Like I want to know like what his deal is. But like I don't want to talk to a guy at a megaphone in front of a grocery store. I'd rather talk to him on my show where I'm a bit more in control of when I can press hang up on that call. But yeah, like that's one. I mean, last week we talked to Aurelian. Check that off the bucket list. I mean, like any kind of like extraterrestrial beliefs are kind of interesting to me, or any kind of strange scientific beliefs. I say scientific in the sense of differences in opinions about science, I guess, like the hollow earth. That's a thing. There's a hollow earth community out there. It doesn't get as much coverage as the flat earth, but that's a thing. And Atlantis, I guess that's another one, like mythical objects or people. Like there's so many things we can explore. Though I don't think we're ever going to have the problem of running out of things to talk about on Truth Wanted. That's for sure. Because I get surprised every week, it seems like.
You know, I know that I'm supposed to be looking at the camera instead of looking at the scene there. But if you've ever watched Vice Rhino's videos, sometimes it's really distracting because while Vice Rhino is narrating, there's this really nice psychedelic background going on that's almost more distracting than what's going on. I really wish if you guys are watching this, you could have watched Pico go from predator mode to nap mode just now.
Yeah.
No, and I was thinking about this too, and you know, a little bit more of like, what kind of conversations do I want to have? I really like testable claims. Like if somebody says something, not just, you know, explaining cosmology, but something that they feel that they can do. Again, this was a call that happened a couple months ago. Someone claimed that they could sense the physical pain of others.
Yeah.
And those calls are really interesting to me, not just for the call itself, but because we might be able to do something with this. Let's actually find out if there's, I'm not beyond thinking that some of claims I think are outrageous might actually be true.
Yeah.
I just need to look into it a little more.
Yeah.
So keep on bringing those calls about outrageous claims and let's see what we can do to find out their validity.
I agree. The dynamic spectrum of human belief is endlessly fascinating, and I'd like to see all facets of it. It's all welcome. So, yeah, thanks for the call, Stitics, and thank you so much.
If I can, I've thought of one more question.
Go for it.
It's a thing that comes up on the Discord all the time. In your opinions, is philosophy a way to get to an absolute answer about things, or is it really just useful for identifying questions we should research?
You know, I would probably say more so the latter than the former. I don't know if I know what absolute truth is. I don't know if that's even a thing that human beings can rationally or fully understand. It might just be an ideal that we have, but I definitely don't have it. If it does exist. So yeah, it does tell us about the kind of questions we should research and how we should research those questions, right? The methodologies involved with, you know, discovering the kind of answers we're looking for. But yeah, I definitely see it as kind of a means to just figuring out life as best as we can and not necessarily towards any kind of absolutes. Because as soon as you think you have the absolute truth, chances are you're going to get proven wrong. So,
no, I'm thinking about the answer to that. And I suppose my answer is I need to actually take philosophy a little bit more seriously. Because so far, every philosophy conversation to me seems to devolve into just name dropping, right? It's like, really, are you going to give me that Hume crap that was debunked so long ago? And so it's probably something that I need to look into more. As far as where I am right now, it seems like philosophy at the very best can suggest where to start looking for the answers, but then it's going to be scientific evaluation that's going to find out if those answers are true. But again, that just tells me I need to look into philosophy more.
So you're saying empiricism is the way to truth, Puck?
Empiricism has been historically the best way to figure out if something is true. I'm not right now. I'm not saying if it's the only way, but it seems to lead to some really nice results.
Well, I'm sure some angry comments will fill you up later. So, well, Stitics, thanks so much for calling in, and thanks so much for the work you do at the ACA. Really appreciate it. Have a good one.
Thank you, guys. Have a great day. Keep on keeping on.
Thank you.
All right. Cool. I like we go in and out with these calls because we're in like we're not using our typical call-in setup in case you haven't seen it, because I'm not like typing in stuff. We all got this chat going on here, and it's nice, it's fun, it's different. But it's also nice knowing I know exactly who I'm talking to. So yeah, it is.
It's nice, except we have no idea what we're going to be asked about.
That's true.
There's a wild card still.
And still some wild cards in there. So let's get to our next wild card here. We're talking to Richard now, calling in from England. Hey, Richard, what's going on?
Hi, guys. How are you doing?
Doing good. Enjoying Saturday. What's going on?
Okay. This question is one that I've wanted to ask in the Facebook group for quite a while. But it's a little controversial for that group, and when it does get asked, it gets quite heated in there. So I thought, seeing as we're having a nice Friendsgiving here, it was a perfect opportunity to ask it in a more relaxed setting.
Yes, bring your question to the potluck that is our Friendsgiving, please.
Is veganism a moral obligation?
Oh, okay. I just want to point out, Richard is asking me this question, and I am not bringing this up. Okay, I didn't know we were going to talk about this. I guess
while Dan is contemplating his answer, I will say that I have steaks thawing for dinner tonight. So
there you go.
You know where we're starting, and now let's see how we get there.
I guess I have to go first because I'm the vegan of the two of us. So this is a change that I've made for myself, this year. And of course, in doing that, I've had to contemplate ethics a lot, right? I've had to contemplate what is ethical in my actions. When I purchase food, there's an ethical implication to just buying things, right? And then there's all the other stuff that comes with veganism. First of all, I think veganism describes a practice more so than a label for a person. If I bought a slab of meat today and then just kept my vegan diet the rest of this week, does that mean I'm not a vegan? Well, no, it just means that action wasn't vegan, right? So like it's more of a description of what is more towards the ideals of what this practice strives for, which is to lessen the suffering of animals in particular, but really all sentient life, and also the health benefits and the environmental aspects of it play into that too. So as far as an obligation, I think veganism can be used in a variety of ethical practices. If you're like a deontologist, if you think you have an obligation, I mean, you could make that argument. But I don't really see it that way. For myself, I think my ethical practice is I want to do the least amount of harm possible. I want to maximize my good and do the least amount of harm and cause the least amount of suffering. And I have the ability to eat on a vegan diet. I live in the city. I live in the 21st century, 2020. There's plenty of options. And I can thrive, not just live, but thrive off of a vegan diet and do that. And by doing that, objectively speaking, I am going to cause less suffering to animals that way, because when we purchase those animals from the stores and stuff, we are breeding them into existence. The market is meeting the demand for those animals. And so, if everybody in Austin stopped buying meat, they would have no reason to send it to those grocery stores. Or if they did, they would do it in a less amount of quantity. And so the farmers that make that meat are going to make less of it. They're going to breed less animals. And so there's going to be less suffering in that process. Okay. So in that sense, yes, like it's an obligation for me if I want to be consistent with my practice of causing the least amount of suffering. Because obviously there's other things I do that still cause suffering on some level, right? And this is what people point out, like, oh yeah, I still drive a car, and that has an impact and stuff. But am I lessening my impact by not eating meat? Yes, for sure. I'm very confident about that. And I'm not saying I'm a perfect person and that all vegans are perfect people, but rather it's just a broader consideration of what we can practically do. And that's what veganism is. It's what we can practically do to, lessen our impact on others. And that's why I do it. And that's why I've made that change. I know obviously it's going to be a longer answer for me, because I'm the vegan there, but Puck, I do want to hear your thoughts on it too.
Well, one of the most interesting things that I've come across in the past few months to learn how to be a proper host for Truth Wanted, I actually listened to every episode from the past year. And it's been fascinating following your journey, not necessarily having to wait week to week, but just getting to hear like the next day you had a conversation with somebody about where your next step is in the vegan journey. This is fascinating to listen to, and I encourage our listeners to do that, because you're in a very different place than you were just in February. So it's a lot of fun for me to see how you made that progression. As far as me, I grew up in a place where if you wanted chicken for dinner, you go to the backyard and pick one out. So animal husbandry and preparing animals to eat while they're still living. This has just been always a part of my existence. And in Alaska, there are a number of native tribes that still require subsistence. Meat sources, caribou or whale even, and they're given special permission from the government to hunt even endangered animals because this is just how their tribe sustains itself. You point out something very interesting, Dan, when you say that a lot of people actually have more options now. And that it's not, and veganism is not necessarily something that everybody can access.
Correct.
Right? So
Yes.
there are going to be some people who live on food islands, or food deserts, I should say, who just
Correct.
don't have the kind of access that they would need to have a healthy diet.
A side note too, sidebar, that's here in Austin as well. I'm not saying just because you live in a city, even like they have like there's like over a dozen different, well, actually more than a dozen. I think it's like twice that. Here in Austin of food deserts, and that's just surrounding the cities, and they define that by how close you are to a grocery store and stuff. There's metrics for that, but yeah, like definitely something to keep in mind. But continue.
Yeah. So for me, any ethical or moral question has so many entanglements that go along with it that to narrow it down to one choice to me seems overly simplistic. Now, Dan says he feels comfortable saying that overall he's reducing the suffering to humans, and I agree with him. Or sorry, to animals, and I can agree with him.
To humans, though, I can make that argument too, but that's for another day.
Yeah, and this is something that I personally probably have not put enough thought into, just because I've always just grown up in a place where, like I said, if you want chicken, you go out to the backyard, you find one, behead it yourself, and prepare it. I've done this with fish. So this is just how I've always naturally lived my life. Do I have this option? My honest answer is I've never actually consulted my doctor about asking whether or not my metabolism can sustain a vegan diet, which is another consideration too. Some people, for whatever reason, it's not the healthiest thing for them to do to go full vegan. This tells me I need to think about it more. But until then, I am sorry to say that I am going to be enjoying my bacon.
Yeah, there's a lot to be said. I mean, like one day I'd like to do a fuller kind of topic, because like this is a response that happens too, where it's like, oh, I haven't looked into this enough, and it's like, and that's a reasonable response. It's a fair response. I had to say the same thing. I think I said that on Truth Wanted at some point. So it's like, well, maybe I should do an episode where we actually do kind of go into it even deeper than what's been talked about. Now, it's just like, I think if you can do it, you should. Like, so that's what it is for me at the end of the day. I see no reason not to. The only reason why I would get McDonald's tomorrow is because I want to, right? Like, I don't have to. There is no particular reason that drives me to do that, other than the pleasure that I would get from that meal. I can get my food from any other kind of source and no animals would have to be directly harmed or cooked up in that process by doing it. And so, like, for me, yeah, I couldn't go back, even if because I don't want to, but like, it doesn't make sense for me on that moral level. It really just doesn't. And that's why I want to stick with it for as long as I reasonably can. And I think I probably could for the rest of my life. Who knows? We'll see. If I need, I don't know what nutrient I would specifically need from an animal that I couldn't get through a supplement, or couldn't be synthesized. But I mean, that is what it is. So anyway,
I think the reason this gets controversial is because it's always going to, come down to one of two. And the people who ask this are usually, seems like they try to narrow you down to one of two possibilities. Either you're inconsistent in your application of morals, or you're a moral monster, right? I don't have a good answer right now as to why some people would have a problem going down to a lake here in Ohio and fishing up some trout for dinner. That is morally bad, but they would also have no problem spraying down a wasp nest in their attic.
Sure. Right?
Yeah. And it's like, where's that consistent application?
Here's the thing. It's about what's practical, right? Like what's most reasonable, what's best for you can do. You can be the best. Let's say you're the most moral person ever. You do everything right. You're Mr. Rogers Puck. But then it found out that you did something like, oh, maybe you hit your children, or you hit your spouse. Okay, You don't have to do that. That's something you can change. There's no reason that you couldn't do that and still do all the other things. And it's just one of those things where it's like everybody has options, and we have more of a choice in this matter than what people think. I think if I could stress anything, it's that. It's like I thought I couldn't do a vegan diet. I'm this giant dude. I thought I needed meat. I thought that was what I absolutely had to do. But it turns out I didn't. And I just didn't look into it enough. And there were so many things about the actual industry itself I didn't realize, in the process of how we get our foods and what people actually nutritionally need, that I just wasn't aware of because of carnism, because of this system that justifies us eating animals that's been going on for thousands and thousands and thousands of years. So I have a lot of thoughts about this, actually, but maybe we'll do a dedicated episode in next year. I'm thinking about doing something like that. We'll see, because there's a lot to deep dive into this, and I have more to say about this now than I ever have. So it's a great question to ask, Richard. Thanks for getting me the chance to talk about veganism, because vegans love talking about veganism. That's for sure. I won't deny it. They like talking about it. So
out of curiosity, Richard, where are you with this question? If you don't want to talk about this, cool, but
no, I don't mind, but I'll try and keep it short because I could talk about it for a long time as well. I'm not a vegan. I've spent a lot of time. I'm not a vegetarian either anymore. I used to be a vegetarian for many, many years. I think many of the vegan arguments for it being a moral obligation are somewhat flawed. But that, as I said, we could go on for hours and hours and hours about that. So I think it's certainly a morally superior position, veganism. But as to whether it's an obligation, I don't necessarily agree with that.
Yeah,
and that's something we could, as I said, talk about for hours. But
it's one of those things. It's like, I don't know if I defend like a deontological position of like duty, right, or how people should approach their ethics. So in that sense, I think I would agree with you, Richard. I don't know if like obligation is the right word, but I do feel compelled to do it for myself. I do think because it's within my means, I am compelled to do it, and I have some philosophy of my own as to why I think I could justify that. But we'll talk about it more. We'll talk about it more on a later time. Cool. It's worth talking about. So thanks for calling about it, Richard.
No problem, you guys.
Thank you.
All right. Have a good one. Yeah. So much more to say, honestly, but I'll never be satisfied until we really get a full episode about it. So
I think I just might have lost the 3 people in the audience who might have at one point supported me as a host. It's like, now I talk about me enjoying burgers and bacon. Yeah, it's like, all right, we can't be supporting this fella anymore. We're done.
Yeah, well, I mean, Truth Wanted didn't start as a vegan show. Right. So I guess, that's how it is. Maybe if I make a dedicated vegan podcast where I only invite vegans on, that'll be it, right? But anyway,
it's such a fascinating question. There's so many possible black holes to go into. So
yeah, if anybody wants to do more interest in it, I've read a couple of different vegan books this year, but I really like Peter Singer's Animal Liberation. I think that book inspires a lot of my thoughts about it now. So check that out. But let's go to another caller here. This is Dustin that's calling in from Virginia. Yeah, Virginia. Dustin, what's going on?
West Virginia.
West Virginia.
Hi.
Okay.
Hi, Dan. Hi, Puck.
Hello.
What's going on?
So I argue on the internet sometimes, usually on like more like text forums or chat or things like that. And sometimes I realize that it's become more of a debate or an argument, and I'd like to sort of shift it to more of a discussion. I don't know if like street epistemology is good for once it's already, you've already sort of tipped your hand and and it's already become argumentative. I know it's sort of like trying to prevent it from getting into that territory. So I was wondering what kind of thoughts or advice you might have on that.
So are you asking whether or not street epistemology is a good idea to use once you've already started arguing, or kind of help me with the question?
Or not necessarily just street epistemology, but like what advice you might have in general for shifting things more from a debate to a discussion, where you're, just calmly talking about what the reasons are for different beliefs, rather than like sort of things getting heated and that kind of thing.
Yeah, I guess, you're asking specifically about, internet message boards. So I'll try to answer that question in the context of that, because the medium by which you approach conversation is going to affect the efficacy of your outcomes. So, for example, there is a 99% chance you're not going to change people's minds if you're talking to them on Twitter. Like, I fully believe that. I think out of all the possible social media platforms you could do it on, Twitter is just not the place. The character limit and the culture there is just not conducive for that kind of conversation. And it doesn't matter how right you are. You could be 100% right in every single thing you post, but that doesn't necessarily mean you're going to change people's minds. So one thing I would consider is, what is the actual platform which you're using by doing it? Is it a call-in show? Is it Facebook? How does that happen? So the longer form that you can get your text in, the better. I wish we could all write books about how we feel, but we don't do that. And even if we did, we wouldn't read them all anyway. So internet message boards are just kind of the place to go for a lot of people. And I like the message board format because it gives a lot of people a chance to respond on a single thread, and they can kind of take it different ways and bring in different sources and stuff. But if you're challenging the claim, I think a street epistemology approach is generally always going to be warranted. Defending the claim, that might be different, because you're going to have to bring in specific kinds of argumentation and citations to do that. But like challenging a claim or asking or verifying a claim, I think an SE approach, however you might define that, whatever tools you might bring from that, is probably the best way to do it. At least that's how I found a lot of my success. I'm happy when I get an email that says, "Hey, like, I watched your show and I changed my mind about this topic." To me, that's a good thing. But I don't know if I've gotten that as much on like message boards or on. I definitely haven't gotten it on Twitter. Actually, there was one time I actually got something on Twitter. But that was because this other guy made a very wrong assumption about who I was and what I was doing, and changed his mind about that. But I don't know. What's your experience with this, Puck? What do you think?
Yeah, Twitter's the worst.
Yeah.
And part of that is because of the character limit, and like you said, possibly some of the environments that these are in. It's just not a really good place to have a good in-depth conversation. And if I were to want to have a deeper conversation with someone, I would want to do it on a platform that would allow both of us to have longer strings of messages to fully explain what we're actually talking about. It almost sounds like I'm describing our Discord. Plug our Discord, because on there you can find people who have positions, and there are places in some Discord servers where you can pull them aside and have a one-on-one, even voice conversation in some cases, where you can have a much longer form discussion. Now, what I have noticed works for me, as far as not letting it turn into a full-on everyone's just mudslinging at each other, I try to do my best to fully understand why my opponent might be convinced by their reasoning. It might not convince me, but I still want to do everything I can to, first of all, understand what their position is, and second, understand why they believe it's convincing enough that I should believe it too. One of the old rules about debate is if you can't defend your opponent's case for them, you don't understand the issue enough. And if you approach them with a sense of that, I want to understand what you're talking about first. I disagree, but I want to understand. Then it opens up the door to them understanding you, and you saying, "Hey, okay, I gave you the space to talk. This is what I believe, and here's why." And there's a couple of YouTubers who are fantastic about having opposing views and having people on their shows who have very, very different views, but they are still able to talk with them in a civil way while still maintaining their ground. And I think part of that is trying to make sure you are understanding them as much as possible instead of just saying, well, here's why I think you're wrong. I would probably phrase that by saying, I can understand why you think that's convincing, but here's why I don't find it convincing.
There you go.
Or maybe echoing back their argument, can I make sure that I'm understanding what you're saying, and this is why you feel this way, and okay,
that's a fantastic
sense.
thing to do. Repeat back what they said in your words to see if you had a good understanding of what they're representing.
Absolutely. People want to feel heard. People want to feel like they're being understood. And if you do understand them, your goal is to make sure that, yes, not only do I fully understand you, but it's because I understand you that I know that what you're saying is wrong or something, depending on what you're talking about.
And it also saves you the trouble of arguing a position that they don't hold. That can get extremely frustrating if especially we as atheists get this a lot where, oh, you're an atheist, so this is what you believe. No, it's not obvious that that's what I believe. And I'm not going to bother defending a position that I don't hold.
Actually, one thing that Dan said, one thing that Dan said was that the longer form that you're talking in, or that you're using to discuss, the less argumentative. And I haven't necessarily found that to be the case. Like sometimes it's like when you have enough room to respond to every single point, it becomes more of a you have to just basically respond in every single sentence in their post. You have to respond in your post, and then back and forth like that. And
that's a good point. That's a good point as well. The reason why I think I still hold to that is because you can at least you want to avoid the gish gallop. I think that's true. But Twitter is always going to be just shots firing at each other. It's always just shots firing at each other. And you can only say single phrases or just catchphrases even. That's the stuff that just gets people riled up and gets that emotional response. I think you're going to be less inclined to have that kind of emotional response when you're evaluating a fully written text rather than, a few sentences meant to aggravate on Twitter. I think that's why I would still prefer it. But you are right. People will abuse the platform of the long form as well and make tons and tons of baseless claims. It's going to be a lot harder to kind of respond. And I guess at that point, you also have to evaluate, is this person going to be honest with you? And are they going to, really engage with the topic wholly? Or are they just going to throw another thing at you if you've disproved one thing? And that's something you got to figure out as you're having the conversation. So.
And then tying this back to the very first conversation we had, you don't owe anybody a debate. And if you're realizing that you're spinning your wheels and getting nowhere and it's just getting heated, I personally feel like there's no shame in saying, all right, well, it's been interesting, but I'm going to find some other conversations to have now. Thank you for your time. There are a number of conversations where you'll find you're stuck in one position, they're stuck in their position. There's some justification if it's in public by saying that by having this conversation, other people reading it are going to get something out of it. And if that's what justifies it for you, then fine. But if you're starting to lose your patience for the conversation, there's no obligation to continue having it.
There
That's
you go.
Good point.
All right,
guys.
Dustin. Yeah, thank you for calling in. Really appreciate it. And thanks for sticking around with the ACA, as all of our callers have so far. Just really cool that we get to talk to some locals, some local yokes.
Good to talk to you.
Yeah.
I love that you called the ACA crew locals, and so far you're the only one who's
because the ACA is a worldwide community, Puck. We're not just in Austin. We're something else. But anyway, that is all for the callers that are here in our meet. But we do have some callers that couldn't make it on the recording for this, but left recordings for us to respond to. So that's going to be the next couple of our callers here. And first, we're going to listen to Katie calling in from Ohio. Let's hear from Katie, please.
Hi, thanks for taking my call. I know you have other calls to get to, so I'll just, ask my question quickly and hang up and let you answer. So my question is for Puck. My question is, what advice do you have for new activists who want to make their voices heard? How do they, grow their channel, or I don't know, what advice do you have? Thank you.
Well, okay. I suppose the best advice that I could give a new content creator is don't wait until everything is all set up perfectly. Don't wait until you have the best webcam and the best internet connection and the best video editing software. There are some very highly successful YouTubers, or now TikTok is starting to be a platform. They have nothing but their cell phone and the front seat of their car, and they build their platform entirely on that. If it is something that becomes interesting to you and you want to grow it, absolutely start investing in some of the good tools. But don't think that just because you don't have the best hardware and the best tools doesn't mean you don't have an opportunity to get your message out there. The other advice that I have is get your message out there. Even if you haven't fully formed your ideas yet, even if it's if you're still learning, when you put yourself out there as someone who is just learning, people will find you, and you're going to find people who are supportive of what you want to learn. You're going to find other resources. You're going to find people, obviously you're going to find people who disagree with you, but sometimes those are great material for videos also. Finding a community is extremely helpful, and no matter what kind of content you want to make, if you want to make makeup tutorials or if you want to make counter apologetics videos, there are people out there that you can network with and form a pretty strong community with. They're going to give you better advice than I can give you as far as technical stuff or as far as content. But my advice is just start. There's never going to be a perfect time, but there is going to be a good time. That's just my perspective as a new creator. Dan, what's yours?
Well, I think I 100% agree with you. Like, you just got to start somewhere and just start doing stuff. I mean, before I was doing Truth Wanted, I was doing some projects with some other people. I did a podcast with Anthony Magdabosco on street epistemology and stuff. And I just like getting involved and just having, these kinds of conversations. And so I was going to find whatever avenue possible to do that. And I ended up starting this show to keep doing that. But if I wasn't doing Truth Wanted, I'd probably be making just more YouTube videos on my own. I'd like to do some more stuff on Twitch myself, but Puck's right. Like, you just have to just start with something, because it's not going to be perfect the first time. This show isn't perfect. Heck, I don't know any content creator that looks at their work and says, yeah, this is absolutely perfect. I can't improve from here. It's always a work in progress. So don't let that be a hindrance to you. Just do it and listen to people, see what they have to say. Hopefully those people have your best interest at heart and aren't just picking on you just to pick on you. But find people you can trust that can give you that criticism when you need it to improve, and just do it.
Yeah. And whatever show concept that you see, like Truth One has been on for over 2 years now. There are other shows that have gone on for longer. I can almost guarantee that just about every show started out as something different than what it evolved into. Mm-hmm. So whatever idea you have for your content, don't be married to it. Be willing to say, okay, I tried this and this didn't work, but this seemed like it was more engaging. Let's shift it to that. Don't be afraid to change the nature of your content to suit whatever material you've got, or if something just plain isn't working out for you for any reason, don't be afraid to change it up.
Yeah, I like that. Well, like I said, we're doing with recorded calls now. So our caller, this is usually the time where they get to respond back, but they can't because they're not here. So Katie, thanks so much for calling in. Really awesome that you did that. But we're going to go ahead and go to our next recording here. So our next recording is Martin that calls in from Florida. Let's hear it.
Hey, Dan. As a fellow Eagle Scout, I was hoping to hear you talk about your Eagle project a little bit. Maybe you could also talk about what you got out of scouting, if it was a positive experience, or what you would change about it if it was a negative one.
Oh, man. Great question. I guess Martin knows about this because I recently put on Twitter about the, shall we say, misconduct from the Boy Scouts of America as far as the lawsuits and, allegations for all of the sexual abuse and stuff. And I was kind of mad about that because it's been going on for years and years and years. And I'm disappointed that it's at the level that it's at. But I got a lot out of my Boy Scout experience. I am an Eagle Scout, and my Eagle Scout project was building some bat houses for Fort Parker State Park here in Texas. Actually, those bat houses, as far as I know, are still out there. Basically, my project consisted of researching the ecology of bats and what they needed. As you know, a lot of bat species are endangered and need some extra care. And so bat houses are kind of different from bird houses. They're put together bit differently, and basically I constructed them and gave them to the park, and we put them up in some different locations so that we could help house some stuff for the bats. And yeah, that was my project. I got my Eagle Scout when I was 17 when I finished that. That was a couple of years ago now, obviously. So yeah, really cool. Like I said, I enjoyed my Boy Scout experience. I got a lot out of it. I learned a lot about the outdoors and a lot of the activities that I still enjoy today, and helped discover a lot of who I am through those experiences. But I also think that it could be improved, and there's ways you can do that could make people more comfortable. For example, like when the Boy Scouts decided to change to allow girls, I was a supporter. I think it was great because a lot of people don't know this. The Girl Scouts and the Boy Scouts are two separate organizations that are not actually related. They don't share funds or anything. So, that's where people are having the controversy, because like, oh, you're stealing from the Girl Scouts and stuff. But the Boy Scouts have been around for a long time, and they have resources that the Girl Scouts haven't. They have like a lot more scout camps and stuff. And so I'd rather girls have those experiences of going to those scout camps and doing fun stuff too, because boys should just be able to do that. People should be able to do that. So anyway, sorry, Puck, I don't know if you can contribute too much to this one.
I didn't even make it to Webelos. So, and for those who don't know anything about Boy Scouts, that's like when you're 7 years old, I think. So
Pretty young. Not that young, but yeah.
I was a Cub Scout. I think when I was about like 5 or 6, I have maybe I think my parents have a couple of pictures of me in uniform, but I was never in it for long enough for it to be, substantially impactful. The two big takeaways that I have about it is I believe that Boy Scouts is closely tied to religious organizations. And there was some controversy for a while that atheists were frowned upon for entering Boy Scouts, especially because it's right there in the Boy Scout pledge, I believe. Dan, you'll have to correct me on that one if I'm wrong.
So the Scout Oath and the Scout Law both are kind of, well, the Scout Oath in particular references God. The Scout Law, one of the points of the Scout Law is reverence. And so you can interpret that however you like, but, the original ideas have reverence for God, right? So there is a history of that. And when you do your Eagle Scout Board of Review, they can ask you about your faith, and they can ask you about, what the law actually means to you and stuff. And so like I had to go through that when I was a Boy Scout. Of course, I was a Christian at the time. But of course I find it problematic today, and I wish that wasn't a part of it. I'd rather it be a bit more secular, because I don't think you need to have a reverence for God to have a reverence for the outdoors and have a reverence for nature, and to enjoy those experiences. I don't think you need to have a religious lens to interpret those things. So yeah, there is some history there. And of course, most Boy Scout groups they meet at churches and stuff like mine did. And, that's always going to be a background thing as well. If a kid who is atheist is going to feel uncomfortable meeting at a church, I can see why. If I could change some things about the Boy Scouts, gosh, there'd be a lot, but that would definitely be one of them. I'd like to have more secular Boy Scouts, and maybe it doesn't have to be Boy Scouts. Maybe it'd be something else. I don't know, but it was fun time. It was a fun time.
Literally anything else I know about Boy Scouts after that is what I saw in an episode of Penn and Teller's BS, and that is an incredibly biased show there. So it's not proper research to say that I watched this episode and I know anything about it that I need to. There's definitely a lot to look into. I know a lot of people like Dan who they had very great positive experiences coming out of it. We're happy they went through it and would be happy to have their kids go through it. And I hear the opposite also, where people had a horrible time. The peer pressure pressure and the continued commitment involved in it got to be too much for some people, but they also felt like they couldn't quit for one reason or another, usually like parental or social pressure. So it could probably go both ways. I don't know enough about it. I'm going to defer this one straight to Dan. So.
Cool. Well, that's all I got to say about that. Yeah, really interesting. I don't get to talk about the Boy Scouts too much, but it was a big part of my life. But let's go ahead and talk to our next caller here. We have Patricia, who's calling in from New York. Let's hear Patricia's call.
Dan, hi Puck. So my question is, are there any conspiracy theories that you've heard that you kind of believe a little bit? Or alternatively, ones that you wish were true? Thanks.
Ones that I wish were true.
Here's the tricky thing about this question. Conspiracies have happened. Like people conspiring to make events happen and those plans being carried out, like, have happened in history. Like, you could just read any book about the history of the CIA to know that. Like, a lot of, not everything that people talk about the CIA is credible, obviously, but like, they definitely helped topple some regimes and through, installing people in power and stuff, in democratic nations and stuff, which is really scary. The Banana Republic and the Banana Wars that people talk about is a great example of some of that happening in Latin America and South America, if you want to look at what was going on there. But yeah, I think a question like this needs to be clarified in the sense that conspiracies do happen. And so the ones that we have good evidence for that we know happen, like, we can say that are real. It's just most of them aren't. Like, there's just so many crazy claims out there that we can't verify, or just, there's just no evidence for them actually ever happening. So I would stick to the ones that we can know for sure are a thing. So yeah, I don't know. What do you think, Puck?
Well, yeah, and to keep working off of that, when you say good evidence, we need actual good evidence, because you and I were doing a little bit of research on a conspiracy. I'm not going to name the conspiracy, but you and I were looking at how they claimed that they were correct, and those were not very good reasons at all. And from listening back to the past year of shows, there was a COVID denier who had called way back in March, and that call did not age well at all, by the way, sorry to say.
Nope.
Yeah, and then you had another caller earlier this year who claimed that 9/11 was an inside job, right? But the evidence that they provide for this is not anything that I would have considered evidence. They basically latch onto some coincidence and try to make it more than it is. So what's more interesting to me than an individual conspiracy claim is what so many of them have in common. That why is this convincing to some people? Like they feel like they caught some weird parallel between two things. Therefore, they must be connected. They were the ones that discovered the connection between whatever, and then the reptilian race that's ruling us from Antarctica. I don't know how that one goes. You'll have to fill me in. But so more interesting to me than any individual conspiracy, that so many of them seem to start out the same way, about finding some weird coincidence. You're the one that discovered it, so you're the special one that got to put it together.
Yeah, it's like a commonality I find too is a denial of, like, a distrust in the media in reporting on the truth of these, which is why people justify it as, oh, like, the mainstream media is going to cover this up and that's why we don't know about it. But like, some of the best information that we know about real conspiracies that have happened are because of media investigation. I mean, like Watergate, for example, that was a conspiracy on some level. Like, that was a group of people who organized in secret to carry out actions towards like a political goal. Like, you can call that a conspiracy. We don't think about it because we don't think about it in those terms because we know it happened. Like, it's real. Like, people talked about it in the news and stuff, but like, or Enron, Enron's another one that happened in the early 2000s, people doing these insider trading and stuff. Like, this stuff happens a lot, but we don't use the same terminology when we say conspiracy theories, because the common image for conspiracy theories is some guy in a basement with a tinfoil hat talking about reptilians and stuff. But like, really, I think if we reframe things a bit and just think about like, oh, the reason why we don't believe in these is not because it's a conspiracy itself, but because the evidence for that conspiracy is not up to the standards that we hold for other kinds of conspiracies, then we can, figure it out from there. And if you want to know a specific one, the Epstein stuff is still out for the jury on me. That's just very, very strange circumstances. And I don't think one can't help but question a lot of what is going on there. And I don't think we know all the answers yet. I'm not saying maybe he didn't do what he did, but there's a lot we don't know. We're still figuring out stuff. And that man was shady as heck, and if anybody was going to be a part of a conspiracy, it would be Jeffrey Epstein. That is just, I don't think anybody can deny that. So that's me.
I'm trying to think about the next part of that question. It's do I have any conspiracy theories that I wish was true? I haven't been digging into conspiracy theories enough to have a good answer for this. But if anything can lead us to a cashless and povertyless society, and if taking down any particular conspiracy is going to help us toward that, let's make it that one. I just don't know if there's any specific out there. There's a lot of them that say that there are 7 people who own 99% of the world's wealth, and they're conspiring to keep everybody. I don't know if they're conspiring to, or if that just happens to be a side effect of what they do. But yeah, if there was some way to take out the financial obligations that keep us bound where we are, if we can get rid of those and exist in a cashless society, great, let's do it.
Cool. Good stuff. I love that question. We have one more question for tonight's show, and we started at a different time, and my sense of keeping the time is off because
I'm usually pretty good at that. And now,
because we're always on the same schedule, and today it's just so different. But we got our last call for today's show, and it's Tanjil calling in from Australia. Let's hear it from Tanjil.
Hey Dan, hey Puck. Nice to see you together on the show. Look, I'll ask my question, then hang up, as it's not really a discussion topic. You both seem to have a huge range of knowledge. Can you tell me roughly how much time per week you would spend in research and keeping abreast of new topics? Thanks, guys. Love the show and look forward to your response. Bye for now.
No, I do like how Tanjil said she likes seeing us on the show when she is not watching this show right now, but that's fine. As far as me, I work a job right now where I get to listen to a lot of podcasts while I'm at work and audiobooks. And so I am listening to one of those two 5 days a week. And some of it's just personal interest stuff, but a lot of it is stuff related to this show. I keep up with a podcast that covers topics related to InfoWars and Alex Jones. I listen to another one that talks about history. And I always I'm trying to read a couple books a month, and keep up with that. And you typically, not always, but the books that I read are kind of always going to eventually be related to the show, just because our show is so broad and covers so many things. I'm constantly looking at this stuff because I am fascinated again by just the dynamic spectrum of human beliefs, and that is something that just really drives me to want to learn more. And so I can read some obscure Reddit posts that, in the middle of the night and think about what if this thing is true? How do we know? I do that. I do that probably too much, which is why I have all this knowledge that would not be useful for a lot of people outside of the context of this show. But yeah, that's me.
As far as I have recently started working with nonprofits, and they, unlike most other ACA call-in shows, they know what they're going to be talking about well in advance, and we get sent a number of articles to research and to figure out what in-depth topics we want to talk about. We'll often talk between the other hosts, okay, this is where I want to go, okay, I'll pick something different so that we're talking about a large different things. But it's nice to know what they want to talk about so that we can work off of there too. A tremendous amount of research goes into this, and I would say that for just specific to nonprofits, I'm doing at least 5 to 6 hours of research just on those. And that's something that just recently started. Other than that, I love informative podcasts. not necessarily to any topic, but just learning stuff in general. And this is why one of my favorites to listen to is the Freakonomics podcast, which they'll talk about everything. One of the recent ones that I listened to was about the invention of a keyboard to write Chinese characters, which is there's so many more characters in the Chinese language than there are in English, right? We just need the keyboard as it is, but they had to come up with a very elaborate system to use a keyboard the size of a standard keyboard to type out the entirety of their language. So I just love picking on this stuff. I'll go to bookstores and just go to a section on something that I never even knew existed just to start learning about it. I am fortunate to have a job where I have access to my phone pretty much the entire time, and I can listen to anything I want. So there's always some informative thing going on. But it's not really directed. It's not really, I want to learn about this subject. More like, let's just turn this podcast on. Let's just go somewhere random with a lot of knowledge and just learn whatever it is that they're going to want to teach me. The only exception, though, like I said, was working with nonprofits. Most of those are going to be about politics or current events, which keeps me nice and grounded in reality and in the present. But that's, like I said, 5 to 6 hours. And you're asking a number of hours. Maybe I would say I probably do about 30, 40 just learning hours in a week.
Yeah. I don't know how I could qualify or quantify rather the number of hours I do either, because I don't know what happens. I don't know what happens to end up in a show sometimes, because it's like, oh, well, I just read about this for 2 hours the other day, so I can actually talk about this, you know? But yeah, it's funny because, like you, I enjoy trying to research things ahead of time if I can, if possible. But this show doesn't allow that because it's just like I sometimes I'll get asked about something I have no idea about, and I just have to use everything I know about everything else to kind of just hold myself together, and that's all right. It makes me feel good too, because it's like, you know, if I'm ever not satisfied with the way that I took a call or something, it's like, well, I didn't know anything about it and I was asked, so I did my best. That's it.
Well, I mean, that being said, it is kind of nice when advance notice does come in. Like a number of calls have come in for people who have emailed or have brought something up in a Facebook group where we actually can go back there and look at this and look at the advanced material. So when the call comes in, it doesn't have to be an introductory lecture. We can pick it up from there and say, okay, well, if the viewers want to learn more about this, go to here's some information for you, but let's continue this conversation. And I think those can lead to more in-depth conversations about the topic, like Raelians. And you know, and I just also wanted to point out that Tanjil is probably a name that if you've watched any ACA productions, you've probably seen that name. She's just got her grubby little Australian paws and everything. She does. If you can think of an ACA project somewhere, it's got her fingerprints on it. And not just for Tanjil, but everybody that we've taken calls from today has made so many great contributions in ways that I don't even know, but in a way that if they weren't there, this organization would not be what it is. So thank you
absolutely
to Tanjil for your question, and everybody else who asked questions today as well.
Yes, thank you everybody that contributed to today's show, and I hope for you guys who are listening at home, you know, we couldn't be there live this week, but hey, I hope you like this. You know, let us know what you think about us doing this kind of pre-recorded show. Did you like it? Did you have no opinions about it? I don't know, whatever. We like to hear about it because this is a show that likes to experiment with how we do things. So, you know, we want to know, what are the results? What did we get from it? One thing I didn't do before we took calls, Puck, is I did not thank the patron of the week, and we should probably do that right now. So this week's patron of the week is brought to you by, and I want to say the letter because it's like Sesame Street, but this actually has a lot of letters in it. It's CPE9CE. So thank you, CPE9CE, for being the patron of the week. And if you would like to become a patron of the week, there's a way you can do that. It's patreon.com/truthwanted. All of the donations to our Patreon helps make this show better. And I want to thank you guys for donating to that. And while we're on the subject of helping out the show, there's a couple different ways you can do that. You can get our merch. We have a bit.ly link for our merch. It's bit.ly/AEN merch. and the Truth Wanted stuff. We got the hoodies, we got the shirts, we got the stickers, we got the masks, and a couple other things on there too. You should definitely check some of that out. It's pretty cool. You can also become a YouTube member if you like that. YouTube membership is pretty neat. You get a little emoji, and when the chat is live, I mean, the chat is live right now if you're watching the premiere, but like when the show is live, which it usually is live every week at 7 p.m. Central on Fridays, then you get some cool features when you sign up for that. If you want to follow me on Twitter, I'm at ObjectivelyDan. You can email the show at truth@atheist-community.org. And you can find this show on iTunes, Spotify, YouTube, wherever else you get your podcast. Please like and subscribe and give us cool reviews because that helps us out. Puck, you said you don't have any pluggables, but do you have anything you want to say before we wrap up today's episode of Truth Wanted?
Yeah, we were just talking about this on the last call. There's a number of ways to keep communication with us. Discord is a fantastic place to engage, especially if we started talking about something and we didn't get into the depth that you would have wanted to.
Mm-hmm.
Go ahead and bring it up on Discord. There's almost always people there who are willing to keep the conversation going. There's a Facebook fan group as well. I love being on there. If you put something on there, you're going to get a response from me. I love being on there. I'm sure you've heard other hosts say stuff like, I get a flood of emails. There's no possible way I could respond to it all. I don't have that problem yet. I'm a little jealous. So if you email this show and send anything attention Puck, I will know that, wait a sec, I actually have some meaningful things I can respond to. I look forward to the day when I am so flooded, I have to decide what to ignore. Please flood my inbox.
All right. Well, you heard it from Puck. Like, he wants his inbox flooded. Please sign him up for every single pornography site. You can just add that to his mailing list, or add him to those mailing lists, rather. That would be good. I think that's what he asked verbatim. So anyway, Puck, thanks so much for being on today's episode of Truth Wanted, my friend.
Such an honor. Thank you.
Yeah. And thank you guys for watching this show and for supporting it for over 2 years now. I really like doing this. I want to keep doing this. And happy Friendsgiving to all of you guys. Please enjoy your weekend. Get some rest if you need it. And just keep doing you. Remember to always keep wanting to. Wow. I messed up the thing. I messed up the thing, Puck. I messed it up.
That's okay. I did too when I took over your show one day.
Have I ever messed that up? I don't know.
No, you have a very good, clean record of always telling people to keep wanting the truth. And today, for some reason,
I also just lost the game. And so did everybody else listening to this. Remember to always keep wanting the truth. And I'll see you next time.